In the 1960s, on the set of the iconic war film The Great Escape, Charles Bronson, known for his tough guy roles, made a chilling remark to his co-star David McCallum. Staring him straight in the eyes, Bronson said, "Watch your wife more closely, or I'll take her from you." It didn't take long for this warning to become reality. David and his wife, Jill Ireland, divorced in 1967. The following year, she married Bronson. Despite this unusual beginning, the three remained close friends throughout their lives, even sharing childcare responsibilities. But behind Bronson's Hollywood success, tragedy loomed. In this video, we'll explore the heartbreaking deaths of Charles Bronson and Jill Ireland, a love story marked by deep devotion and shattering losses. If you enjoy our content, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories about Hollywood's most unforgettable stars. He lied about his harsh childhood. Charles Bronson, born November 3, 1921, in the small mining town of Ehrenfeld, Pennsylvania, came from extraordinarily humble beginnings before becoming a Hollywood icon. Nestled in the Allegheny Mountains, Ehrenfeld was part of a mining region where life was tough. Bronson, whose real name was Charles Buczynski, was the 11th of 15 children in a Roman Catholic family of Lithuanian descent. His father, Walter Buczynski, was a Lipka Tatar from Druskininkai, Lithuania, while his mother, Mary Valinsky, was born in Pennsylvania to Lithuanian immigrant parents. Growing up, Bronson's family lived in extreme poverty. Their home was a small shack with no hot water, barely large enough for the entire family. They slept in shifts due to lack of space. Coal train tracks ran near their home, a constant reminder of their deep ties to the mining industry. Life in this mining community was full of hardship, and Bronson often spoke of his struggles in later interviews. English was rarely spoken in their household, a common situation for many first-generation American families. Bronson and his siblings mostly communicated in Lithuanian, setting him apart from his peers. Even as a soldier during World War II, his accent was so thick that fellow soldiers often assumed he was foreign. In addition to English and Lithuanian, he also spoke Russian thanks to his family's Eastern European roots. Bronson had a complicated relationship with his father. In a 1973 interview, he confessed that he didn't know whether he loved or hated him. What he remembered most was that every time his mother announced their father's return home, all the children would hide. In 1933, when Bronson was just 12 years old, his father died of cancer, plunging the family into even deeper poverty. Bronson had no choice but to enter the workforce early. He started in the mines office, then moved into the coal mines themselves, earning just $1 per ton of coal extracted. Sometimes he worked double shifts, bringing home a meager $1 a week, about $24 in today's money. Working in the coal mines was dangerous. Collapses were common, and Bronson, along with his brother, often performed the risky task of removing large coal chunks that blocked the mine's tunnels. The Great Depression hit the Bronson family hard. They suffered from extreme poverty and frequently went without food. Bronson remembered his mother couldn't afford milk for his baby sister, who had to drink warm tea instead. Bronson himself once had to wear his sister's dress to school because the family had no proper clothing. He became the first in his family to graduate from high school, but that education came at a price. By age 10, he was already working in the mines alongside his older siblings. These experiences left him marked for life, physically and emotionally. He often spoke bitterly about the 6 grueling years spent in the mines, which left permanent scars on his legs and torso. Working in the darkness of the mines also gave him chronic headaches and claustrophobia. "I never got rid of the smell of coal in my nose," he once lamented. To cope with the stress, Bronson started smoking at age 9. Despite the exhausting labor, his circumstances began to shift when he enlisted in the U.S. Army Air Forces during World War II in 1943. He served in the 760th Flexible Gunnery Training Squadron and later as an aerial gunner on Boeing B-29 Superfortresses with the 61st Bombardment Squadron, part of the 39th Bombardment Group based in Guam. Bronson flew 25 combat missions over Japan and was awarded a Purple Heart for wounds received in battle. He later said his military service was the best thing that ever happened to him. It allowed him to escape the mines, gave him 3 meals a day and decent clothes, a first in his life. The military discipline, structure, and camaraderie helped him gain confidence and also improved his English. After being honorably discharged in 1946, Bronson struggled to find his footing. He held various jobs: truck driver, steel worker, coal miner, but none felt right. It wasn't until he met a group of actors in Atlantic City that he became interested in acting, a passion that would eventually lead him to Hollywood and stardom. But the journey wasn't easy. As his career grew, Bronson became known for his tough guy persona, often playing hardened men in westerns and action films. Despite his fame, he was notorious for embellishing, or even fabricating, parts of his personal history, creating myths that added to his mysterious, intimidating public image. According to biographer Brian D'Ambrosio, Menacing Face Worth Millions, A Life of Charles Bronson, Bronson delighted in fooling gullible reporters with exaggerated childhood stories. He sometimes claimed he didn't speak English in high school, that his mother sold him to travelers, or that he wore his sister's clothes to school. Though these tales added to his legend, those close to him, including his first wife, Harriet Tendler, denied them as false. "That story about Charlie wearing dresses is absolutely ridiculous," Tendler once said, adding that his brothers often joked about his embellished tales of misery. Even after becoming successful, Bronson continued inventing stories. He claimed to have been jailed twice, though no prison records confirm this, and once said he'd been shot by a police officer on a freight train but miraculously survived when the bullet fell out on its own. Though many of these stories were clearly fantasy, his military service was unquestionably real and transformative. It had left deep emotional marks, even if he rarely spoke of it publicly. In Paul Talbot's 2015 book Bronson's Loose Again, on the set with Charles Bronson, it's revealed that Bronson had a serious altercation during his training with the 770th Flexible Gunnery Training Squadron in Arizona. After a sergeant provoked him, Bronson threw the man to the ground, believing he wouldn't be punished if he didn't hit him directly. But the sergeant broke his arm in the fall, and Bronson was sentenced to 6 months of forced labor, hauling meat in the mess hall and taking out garbage. After his discharge in 1946, Bronson found himself adrift in civilian life. He had no clear direction, only the drive to survive. He bounced between odd jobs, working as a baker in Philadelphia, a laborer in factories, and even a bingo caller on the Atlantic City boardwalk. But despite the long hours and hard work, none of these jobs brought him real satisfaction. He was restless, searching for something greater. That moment came unexpectedly. While working behind the scenes for a small theater company in Atlantic City, painting sets and doing basic manual tasks, Bronson began to observe the actors closely. Something about the stage captivated him. Watching them transform into different characters, he realized he too could draw on his own deep reservoir of pain and experience. It was here, amid backstage dust and dim lighting, that the seed of an acting career was planted. Encouraged by a few acquaintances, Bronson made the bold decision to pursue acting seriously. In 1948, he moved to New York City with fellow ex-serviceman Jack Klugman, who would later become a celebrated actor in his own right. The two shared a tiny, cramped room with barely enough money between them to afford food. Klugman later recalled that Bronson was so broke he sold his blood for $5 just to get by, a grim but telling symbol of his willingness to sacrifice anything to chase a dream. Bronson enrolled in acting classes, first in Philadelphia, and later at the Pasadena Playhouse in California, known for training some of Hollywood's biggest stars. His early training wasn't easy. Bronson's thick Slavic accent and gruff demeanor clashed with the polished, suave leading men Hollywood typically favored. At one audition, he was laughed at for mispronouncing the word heroin, exposing the challenges he faced trying to fit into a world so different from his own. Still, he pressed on, knowing he couldn't afford failure. His tough upbringing had prepared him for rejection, and he developed a thick skin. Though he often landed minor roles, as a gangster, soldier, or dock worker, there was something magnetic about him. His smoldering eyes, chiseled face, and imposing physical presence gave him a raw, dangerous energy that casting directors couldn't ignore. In 1951, he landed his first film role in You're in the Navy Now, a minor part in a naval comedy starring Gary Cooper. According to Hollywood lore, He got the job simply because he was the only actor at the audition who could burp on command, a quirky detail that underscored both his desperation and his resourcefulness. Though his name was barely known and his roles were small, Bronson's unique look and gruff voice stood out. Over the next 2 years, he honed his skills in acting schools, studied method acting, and gradually learned how to use his personal history, the pain, the struggle, the rage, to fuel his performances. Reflecting on those early days, Bronson said in a 1972 interview, "I was already typecast because of my funny speech and rough appearance. I didn't look or sound like the guy who gets the girl. I looked like a stick of dynamite." It was a description that would come to define not only his physical presence, but the explosive impact he would soon have on screen. At the height of the Red Scare in early 1950s Hollywood, paranoia hung thick in the air. The industry was gripped by fear, as Senator Joseph McCarthy's anti-communist crusade tore through studios, careers, and reputations. Actors, writers, and directors were blacklisted based on the faintest suspicion of communist sympathies. For Charles Buczynski, a man of Eastern European heritage with a thick accent and a surname that sounded foreign to American ears, the threat was more than theoretical, it was personal. Fearing that his Lithuanian name might trigger suspicion or cost him roles, he made a pivotal decision. While driving through Los Angeles one afternoon with his friend Steve McQueen, who at the time was also hustling for roles, Buczynski spotted a street sign, Bronson Avenue. The name struck him. It was short, sharp, strong, and undeniably American. On that day, Charles Buczynski vanished, and Charles Bronson was born. The name change marked a turning point. Casting directors suddenly looked at him differently. Though he still wasn't cast as a romantic lead or charming hero, he began to land tougher, meatier roles, characters shaped by grit and violence, much like the man himself. His breakthrough came in 1960 with The Magnificent Seven, a Western reimagining of Akira Kurosawa's Seven Samurai. Bronson played Bernardo O'Reilly, a tough but compassionate gunfighter with Mexican and Irish roots, a layered role that let him display both strength and heart. Acting alongside heavyweights like Yul Brynner and Steve McQueen, Bronson held his own, and audiences took notice. From there, the doors opened wider. He appeared in The Great Escape, 1963, as the claustrophobic tunnel digger Danny Valinsky, where his performance added humanity to a high-octane war film. He went on to appear in Battle of the Bulge, The Dirty Dozen, and most notably, in Sergio Leone's Once Upon a Time in the West, 1968, where Bronson played the enigmatic harmonica-playing gunman opposite Henry Fonda. The role was nearly silent, but Bronson's intense screen presence carried the character and helped cement his international stardom. In Europe, Bronson was not just respected, he was revered. While American studios often overlooked him or typecast him as a one-note tough guy, foreign audiences saw something mythic in his quiet intensity. In Italy, he was dubbed Il Brutto, the Ugly One, a title meant with admiration for his rugged, unconventional look. In France, he was considered one of the greats, and in Japan, his face adorned skyscraper-high billboards, with fan clubs and media obsessing over his every role. For much of the late 1960s and early 70s, Charles Bronson was one of the most bankable stars in the world, even if his fame abroad eclipsed his reception in his home country. Still, critics weren't always kind. They accused him of having a limited emotional range, of playing the same brooding, stone-faced character over and over again. But for Bronson, this wasn't a limitation, it was a choice. He didn't chase awards or seek to impress critics. He embodied stoicism, raw masculinity, and a moral code forged in pain, and that authenticity resonated with millions. His story was the American dream with blood under its fingernails. Born Charles Buczynski, the 11th of 15 children in a dirt-poor mining family, he endured backbreaking labor, discrimination, and war. But through sheer will, he transformed himself into Charles Bronson, a cinematic force whose face, even in silence, could tell an entire story. His most iconic role came in the Death Wish series, beginning in 1974. As Paul Kersey, a mild-mannered architect turned vigilante after the brutal murder of his wife and the assault of his daughter, Bronson became the embodiment of vengeance. The role struck a cultural nerve in a nation grappling with rising crime and urban decay. With each sequel, the character became more myth than man, a silent avenger dispensing justice in a world gone mad. It was a character tailor-made for Bronson, blending his on-screen persona with the shadows of the life he had lived.